Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the movie Hangout. Well, I just finished Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 2, titled The Mallrats. When I heard the title, that kind of reminds me of the Kevin Smith movie from the 90s, Mallrats, but I don't know. I just think it's interesting that um, the creators of Stranger Things are even using titles that are like throwback. But anyway, I found a great article on Vulture that actually condenses what is going on in this second episode because this season has just been phenomenal. I think season 3 so far is way better than season 2, and season 2 was pretty decent. There is so much going on. Um, all the characters are going through, their character arc, and there's just so much to talk about. So let's dive right into it. Stranger Things recap magnets. How do they work? And little do we know, the little alphabet magnets you put on your fridge have a lot. It just leads to a lot. Okay, there's good news and bad news. As far as Billy is concerned, the good news is he's not dead. I think that's good. The bad news, well, maybe he's a little dead. He's certainly not entirely himself. The previous episode ended with him getting dragged into the basement of an abandoned warehouse. But as you might expect, this was no ordinary basement in an ordinary abandoned warehouse. Instead, he seems to have found a new way into the Upside Down, where he meets a gang of creepy phantoms that includes his own doppelganger. The Billy who emerges isn't entirely himself. He's given a strange flashbacks to his time in the cellar and prone to violent fantasies, as when Karen tries to apologize for not showing up for their motel assignment. Sometimes he's capable of worse, as when he kidnaps a fellow lifeguard and brings her to the warehouse to meet what? We don't know. Now, it seems like this is going to be the creature is a mixture of all the flesh from the rats and everything, and it's like the physical embodiment of the Phantom, whatever you want to call it, from seasons 1 and 2. Really, really interesting. Billy's never been the easiest character to love, even with his sweet stash. It's pretty sweet, and Mom's pleasing bod. But this Billy is a new kind of trouble, and his mission is to build. His like polar opposite version of himself tells him you need to build, and he's like, you see like the figures of all these other people, and you're like, what exactly does that mean? Well, later on we find out. That's not the only sort of trouble with Foot and Hawkins either. Too terrified to hang out with Elle after Hopper's threat, Mike takes a cue from Hopper and lies about an ailing grandmother who's actually doing just fine to create an excuse to keep his distance. Elle may still be a bit naive about how the world works, but she knows a lie when she hears it. And though Hopper is pleased that his plan has apparently paid off and that Mike is out of the picture for now, this separation sets off a chain reaction he never predicted. One that climaxes with Elle bumping into Mike at the mall and claiming, I dump your ass, as blunt of a breakup as has ever been delivered. But first, a shopping montage. This is so cool because, like, apparently this was filmed in an abandoned mall, I think in Georgia. And the production team, the set production was fantastic. They basically redid the inside of this mall to look like the 1980s. I wish malls today I wish they looked like this, because now, like, malls are just like boring. They're just beige, whatever. I mean, the malls in the 80s were like a carnival. So many lights, bright colors, like really, really interesting. After some antagonistic moments last season, Max and Elle here become BFFs by trying on outfits. Cue Madonna's Material Girl. Cue a montage sequence. It's the most 80s moment in this most 80s of series, and it's delightful, especially since Millie Bobby Brown and Sadiq Sink seem to be having so much fun being girls. Stranger Things hasn't been easy on either character, so it's nice to see Max and Elle enjoying themselves and letting their guards down, even if it's obviously won't last. Elle using her superpowers to prank Hawkins' mean girls seems like it could get her into trouble down the line. There's a lot more happening at the mall this episode too, including a reunion we didn't see last week, the one between Steve and Dustin. It was pretty cool. You got to check it out. Season two's most winning and unlikely buddy team. They're both delightfully thrilled to see each other at the ice cream shop, much to the dismay of Robin, who asked Steve, "How many children are you friends with?" And it was pretty funny because Steve is like huge, and Dustin's like this little kid, and I don't know. It was a good goofy moment. Obviously, she doesn't get it, and for all the creative supernatural visuals in the series, a shot of Robin looking on as Steve and Dustin go through their elaborate greeting remains my favorite of the season so far. I think it's mine too. It's pretty good. They have a bond that goes beyond age that only allows Dustin to tell Steve that Susie prefers kissing him with his teeth out. And this is the girlfriend, Susie, that's supposedly in Utah, that's a Mormon. I hope, for one, I hope that there really is a Susie, and we see her in the last episode, and she's like super hot, everything that Dustin said, and it just shocks everybody who's telling the truth. I hope that's the payoff. Okay, let's go to Hopper. Hopper's newfound confidence inspires him to make a date with Joyce, to which she somewhat reluctantly agrees. She follows up at Enzo's and he's wearing a Magnum PI inspired outfit, and tears it into some scotch and a bottle of Chianti, and he pronounces it Chianti. It's hilarious. Much to his frustration, Joyce doesn't show, and as he makes his way to the exit, he doesn't even notice the Russian strongman drinking at the bar. And this Russian guy, we're going to see him pop up later on. He's like the Russian henchman from episode 1. So he's a really sinister looking guy. Okay, so let's move on to this episode. However, we learned that a bunch of Hawkins residents don't like being put out of work by progress, and that progress has apparently been accelerated by Mayor Larry Klein, and Larry Klein is played by Carrie Ooze, which I was so happy to see him because if you saw the movie The Princess Bride or Robin Hood Men in Tights, he played the lead characters in both of those, and he was absolutely fantastic. I think he's a great comedic actor, but then he like disappeared for like 10 years and then showed up in the first Saw movie, strangely, and he was okay in that, but I don't know. This is what I don't get about the entertainment business. There's some people that are really great and they never work, and then there's other people that are lousy, they're horrible, and they're in like 3 or 4 movies a year. I don't know, but he was pretty good in this episode, I gotta say, and I liked seeing him as the mayor. A strong Star Court proponent, Klein wants Hopper to disperse the protesters because they don't have a permit, whatever. Hopper only reluctantly agrees shortly after Klein mentions he's planning a big 4th of July celebration. That's the big carnival 4th of July celebration that we saw in the trailer. Unless subsequent episodes prove this to be a red herring, this is what is known as foreshadowing. But, I mean, I have to say that this episode, I would give this one out of 4 stars. I would say this one is a 4 out of 4 because so much is going on, so much is being set up. They didn't overdo the 80s music, which I appreciated. They kind of overdid the 80s music in the first episode. This one was fantastic. And then, okay, let's get to the rats. So elsewhere, Jonathan and Nancy, they are basically doing an investigation by Mrs. Driscoll's complaints of diseased rats. So all those really creepy looking zombie like rats that we saw in episode 1. Apparently there's like a little lady she's so cute. Like when you see this episode, she's a character. She's like up to here and everybody. Really, really cute. She's complaining that there are rats eating up all the fertilizer and cleaning chemicals, and that'll be something that I think is going to be happening more and more as the season goes, and we'll find out why. And she catches one of these rats in a cage, and the cage is like shaking all over the place and stuff. So Jonathan and Nancy, they take pictures of it. They're like, this might lead to something. They're both trying to break a good story to really make a name for themselves at the local newspaper. And so she shows the amateur sleuths an empty bag of fertilizer that's been devoured by the rats, which is weird enough. Weirder still is the rat she's caged, which freaks out, then passes out as Jonathan and Nancy observe it. What we don't see the little bastard then explodes, turns to goo, and slithers away. Diseased obviously doesn't cover what's wrong here. Hawkins, a tough place for rodents, and even tougher one for lifeguards. And it looks like it's going to get even more dangerous in the next episode. Yeah, so like the rat explodes, the mush of its flesh then slithers out through the cage bars. It was, I mean, just like the T-1000 and Terminator 2 through the bars at the crazy house. I mean, it was exactly like that. I thought the CGI was pretty good. It didn't look overly fake. And yeah, I don't know. I would give this episode a 4 out of 4. Comment below, let me know. And as always, if you want to get future rants, reviews, or original content, click subscribe. Later.